So in case you missed it, happy Monday morning. World War III may have just been triggered. In a shocking escalation just hours before peace talks were to begin, Ukraine, of course, launches one of the boldest and most destructive drone strikes deep into the heart of Russia, now being dubbed Russia's Pearl Harbor. And it came immediately, I guess coincidentally, just after Senator Lindsey Graham's visit to Ukraine. Coincidence or coordination is the biggest question, but there's a bigger question out there. You see, mainstream outlets are now reporting that Trump was left in the dark. Ha, isn't that convenient? Completely unaware of the impending strike. If that's true, it raises the question they could be attempting to raise, which is who's running the show? And wouldn't that be an extraordinary juxtaposition against the Biden administration, huh? And if it's false, the implication for Russia's retaliation could be, well, beyond catastrophic. So we're looking at a tipping point. In 24 hours, we should have the answer, because if you think Putin's just going to roll over and say, okay, maybe I should have these peace talks now, maybe everybody else is right, I'm wrong, well, then you don't know Vladimir Putin very well. And I'm going to break it down, including the headline change that indicates where this plot twist is truly going to play out. And that's the story I'll bring you in 1 minute. First, as always, let's do a little, strange and unusual housekeeping. You see real Donald Trump here, President Trump. Well, he indicated highlighted a post. It was a little bit unusual, to say the least. You see there, 1 day ago, there is no Joe Biden. Executed in 2020. Biden clones, doubles, and robotic engineered soulless, mindless entities are what you see. Democrats don't know the difference. It's a strange post for President Trump to repost, trying to create a little bit of a distraction from the major story, throw people off the scent of what happened, because his silence on the biggest story is, well, the paramount question, isn't it? Because if you go through his Truth social media, you'll see nowhere in here is there any mention of what just happened in Russia. Nothing whatsoever. And I went through several days all the way past the event, and, well, nothing's there. Which is the biggest question of the day, isn't it? The biggest story of the day. Donald Trump very rarely ever being silent, but suddenly now deciding, choosing silence. What does that go to tell you? Rather, putting this post up. Media efforts to conceal Biden being demented was not herd mentality. Although that its own unforgivable sin, it was intentional activism. So maybe he was just referring to this story, right? The Biden memory saga that continues to roll on, keeping, well, not you, because you're here, but keeping the masses off the scent of where the real stories are. Of course, mainstream media disagreeing. I don't agree. While I was absolutely believed that the media, myself very much included, didn't work hard enough to get around the smokescreen that Biden people were putting up around him, I don't think that it was intentional activism. We simply didn't push hard enough, and that should be the end of your journalistic career, but of course it won't be. So you simply just didn't see it happening. The world saw it happening, but you missed it somehow. Chuck Todd on Piers Morgan's show, he pretty much declares the same damn thing.
Again, I always look at the criticism of the press here through the person that's making the criticism, and I think in some ways there's almost an eagerness to blame the press without looking at who should be blamed here, and it's the leadership and, frankly, the members of the Biden administration and the leadership of the Democratic Party.
There we go. So now we're to believe your headlines now? Because you're so incapable and incompetent that you couldn't look through a smokescreen? It was the Democrats' fault. It was the administration's fault. Not that we are to be journalists or investigative journalists. We simply just, we couldn't see through it. But when you ask the leadership of the Democrats, the president NBC liberal show host Eugene Daniels came out, the White House Correspondents' Associate President. Let's remember what he stated once, because these are the folks whose headlines you're supposed to believe today, with one of the most important stories that have come out in modern history, the potential beginning to World War III, Russia's Pearl Harbor. But these are the folks we're to believe, right?
But we're also human. We miss our families and significant life moments in service to this job. We care deeply about accuracy and take seriously the heavy responsibility of being stewards of the public's trust. What we are not is the opposition. What we are not is the enemy of the people, and what we are not is the enemy of the state.
Ravaging applause. We are not the opposition. You must believe us. We care deeply about accuracy. Oh, that didn't age so well now, did it? You care deeply about accuracy. You didn't see it coming. The Democrats created everything. It was such a smokescreen that we frankly just were incapable of doing our job. But believe us today. Believe us today about Trump. Don't worry, I'm coming around to it. Because there was no signs, no indications. You've seen the multitude of tapes that we have, so I won't play them again. But, I mean, let's just take one quintessential example, shall we?
To Europe. Like, I don't understand, liquefied natural gas is in great demand by our allies. Why would you do that? Because you understand, we just talked about Ukraine. You understand you're fueling Vladimir Putin's war machine because they got to get their gas from him, And he looks at me, stunned with this, and he said, I didn't do that. And I said, Mr. President, yes, you did. It was an executive order, 3 weeks ago. And he goes, no, I didn't do that. And he's arguing.
There was no signs there. None whatsoever. Of course it was, right? It was a smokescreen. We couldn't see it. There was no indications. 85% of the public could see it, but you couldn't see it. I guess a lot of you could get a new job as journalists because you're far better than the establishment. Now Secret Service officials coming out and even stating Biden got lost in his own closet at the White House. But don't look this way. Believe our headlines now. Please believe our headlines. They're going to launch an investigation. Sure they are. Another investigation that will result in anything, because the press has learned now, right? They've learned we have to be more responsible. Except when you read the headline about the investigation into Joe Biden's cognitive decline. Senate Republicans have announced plans to launch their own probe into former President Joe Biden over his cognitive abilities while in office, claiming they want to investigate who's running the country during what they call Biden's decline. So much for that responsibility. So much for being the harbingers of truth. What they call Biden's decline. You see, nothing's going to change. It simply won't. But remember, this centers around what just happened in Ukraine. And I'm going to get there in a second. And a headline. Ukraine did notify the Trump administration of the attack in advance, a Ukrainian official said, or Ukraine did not notify the Trump administration of an attack in advance. Wow. I guess accuracy doesn't become you very well. Trump's silent. And this little headline twist is what may now dictate our very future. And more than likely, it's going to come in the next 24 hours. I'm going to give you the details of what just occurred and come back to this headline and why exactly it is so significant. Or should I say headlines? It's hard to tell, isn't it? So pause here, because I need a simple favor. It's not difficult to do at all. You see that subscribe button down below? If it's not clicked for you, I hope you'll click it, because we try to keep the news real black and white here. Many of you also finding that membership button just below. Thank you so much for clicking on it and becoming a member. Other of you providing super thanks, and even more of you moving over to Restricted Republic, our platform. All the news we publish on every platform, no matter what happens to the video, if it's there, if it's gone, it remains at Restricted Republic. You know what's even better than that? How about exclusive content? Content you can't get anywhere else. You see, this is the single source for news. This catalog would take you months and months and months to get through, because everything we've done remains there at all times. Every day you'll see 3-4 videos pop up on only the important stuff. No cooking, no sports, no entertainment, unless it involves politics and actually what affects your world. I hope you'll go to restrictedrepublic.com today for me after you check that you're subscribed, after you may join as a member on the platform you're watching this video on. Some of you want to go that additional step, and in return, what do? I provide you more news in the format that you've come to love and adore, because this channel continues to grow, the videos continue to grow, and for that, thank you. And your support makes that possible. Without it, you'd see a black screen if you clicked here. But thankfully, that is not the case today. So let's get back to this headline story. We're going to come back to the Chinese connection to this Ukraine escalation, the ambassador now coming out and blaming the U.S. squarely for the battle in Ukraine, saying they've never provided lethal weapons to any side. Now, believe him or not, it's pretty much insignificant at this point, because first, we have to deal with the Ukraine-Russia escalation. Hegseth coming out. There's no reason to sugarcoat it. The threat China poses is real, and it could be imminent. Trump coming out saying, well, they violated their agreement with us. I tried to save them, so much for being Mr. Nice Guy. You see, Trump never holds words when there's major escalations going on. He always comments on it, except for this most recent one, which leads directly to the heart of the bigger story. You see here Lindsey Graham, I'm going to silence him because there's no words, coming in to visit with his best friend, his buddy, Zelensky, the big thumbs up, and only a day or so after, well, another major story breaks. Of course, Lindsey Graham made several strong statements during that visit, this one included.
The game that Putin's been playing is about to change. He's going to be hit, and hit hard.
Okay, now I selectively stopped that clip. I'm going to play the full thing in a minute. But I think the message that was said in that opening statement was rather strong, wasn't it? Russia's going to be hit, and hit hard. And, well, it was just a day or so later. Ukrainian officials said the country's drone damaged more than 40 warplanes and attacks on 4 military airports deep inside of Russia. The biggest story today, by far. Hands down. They're calling it Russia's Pearl Harbor. Ukraine's surprise drone attack hits nuclear bombers. Okay. And there's been clip after clip. I'll go full screen in case you didn't see these. This was an all-out drone attack. I'll even tell you how they did it. Major damage. Don't expect a response from Russia on this. Well, then you don't know Putin very well. Some of the clips have sound. Apologize for that. And now you see how they executed this. Showing you the damage. And showing you how they were pulling it off. I wanted to play that for you. And then replay what Lindsey Graham stated.
The game that Putin's been playing is about to change. He's going to be hit, and hit hard, by the United States when it comes to sanctions. China, the game you're playing with Russia is about to change. If you keep buying cheap Russian oil to fuel Putin's war machine, there will be a 500% tariff on all of your products coming into the United States.
Okay, so we'll stop it there again, because now that begs a bigger question, doesn't it? Because we have this major strike on Russia, Russia's Pearl Harbor. The mainstream media changing headlines. So we're going to pause for a second and ask a question. If the strike was coordinated behind Trump's back, then who exactly gave Ukraine the green light? And why right before peace talks? Is that potentially them attempting to make Trump appear as Biden, as if he doesn't know what's going on? And if he didn't know what's going on and they did it behind his back, well, then the implications here might even be larger. So the question of this video is simply this, and I'm going to give you more information here in a second. Did Trump know, or did he not know? Very curious to see what your response will be. 34% of Russia's strategic aviation assets, worth about $7 billion, was hit today by what they're calling the spider web attack. And you're not going to expect a response from Putin. But it's war. You have to anticipate that. How did they do it? Well, this clip shows you exactly how they launched this. What you're seeing there is a semi-truck. And watch what flies out of it. So what you were seeing there was a drone flying out. So I had to vet it out further, like I always do for you. So this launches what's called a drone swarm. It looks as if it's a semi. It opens up, and drones fly out and are able to attack targets deep in the heart of Russia. This is a very real attack. We have more footage of it. Of course, the truck is set to self-detonate. Russia found it, at least citizens in Russia found it, and shortly thereafter the truck explodes, killing any evidence or just simply whatever drones were remaining. We don't know. The ever-resourceful Ukraine, coming out of Lindsey Graham again, used creative drone warfare tactics to successfully attack Russian bombers and military assets used to kill Ukrainian citizens and destroy their country. Russia indiscriminately kills men, women, and children. It's time for the world to act decisively against ruling aggression, although Ukraine just attacked a bridge that was holding a train that also killed men, women, and children. You see, no one wins in war. But I wanted to just show the hypocrisy. And of course, we know who the biggest backer of Ukraine is. Lindsey Graham has always been. Just look at the thumbs up. I love a citizen a constituent of his. Lindsey Graham lives an hour and a half from me. He has yet to visit us in western North Carolina a single time after Hurricane Helen. He's flown to Ukraine 9 times. You see, some would argue that Lindsey Graham is part of the bigger establishment, isn't it? But that's not the headline of the story now, is it? Trump administration sources told CBS that the White House wasn't aware that today's large-scale drone attack by Ukraine on the Russian military aircraft was coming. Followed by Ukrainian officials, we notified the Trump administration in advance of the attack on Russian airports. Well, who's served by this confusing headline? Do you think Donald Trump is running a misinformation campaign? The man who sometimes even has to guard his own statements or should guard them suddenly now is running a misinformation campaign, the same thing he has complained about for years that others do to him? Well, Axios highlights it in, don't they? Ukraine did not notify the Trump administration, or which headline you prefer? Ukraine did notify the Trump administration, because the consequences could be devastating, because imagine what Vladimir Putin's thinking right now. Did Trump authorize this? If he did, that means he could further attack me. Or he's trying to leverage his power to assure that I come to the negotiating table ready to go and we can finally put an end to this, because Trump has voiced his unhappiness of Putin recently. But we're supposed to believe, according to that headline, the one that they ended up with, Ukraine did not notify the Trump administration, that the entire apparatus of the U.S. government and the intelligence apparatus didn't know anything about this. Boy, those are pretty big implications for the U.S. government. It would make it appear fragmented, not communicating with itself, and there's some larger power than President Trump running the government who decided to launch an attack on its own. Isn't that convenient? To what they want you to believe. All just before a peace summit. All before they just had to yell at Ukraine. Well, listen in here.
To their lead negotiator, Rustem Umerov, who will be the lead negotiator on the next talks in Istanbul. And he hadn't seen it as well. And I always caution him, don't say things like that, because if you don't show up, part of life is showing up. And you need to show you're serious. And the thing we're driving to is to get a ceasefire.
Well, that is what Trump has been going after. Ukraine hasn't taken it serious at all. I might not even show up, they stated. Lindsey Graham flies out there. 2 days later, Russia's Pearl Harbor happens. Axios wants you to believe the Trump administration didn't know. Dude, Russia's delegation literally just arrived in Istanbul for a meeting for peace deal, and you Pearl Harbor them. Now who's the bad guy? Now the mainstream media is quick to put this post up from several days ago of President Trump stating, Vladimir Putin doesn't realize if that it weren't for me, lots of really bad things would have already happened to Russia. And I mean really bad. He's playing with fire. And they take one section of that. Lots of really bad things will happen to Russia. Not exactly what he stated. And now you're going to conflate the fact that if he knew or not. And this all leads to the final concern. Will Russia's retaliation to Ukraine's strategic drone strikes decisively end the conflict? Because in many ways, you just gave Vladimir Putin the green flag. to go on an all-out offensive. And knowing the arsenal that he carries, the implications of that could be staggering. Do you believe that Trump would launch this attack simply to push Putin to the negotiating table? Because the argument is ludicrous in itself. Because of one kamikaze drone strike of that size, Putin now believes that he is completely weakened and unable to defend himself against Ukraine. Now that's the argument they're trying to make, seriously. If I was in Putin's shoes and you did that to my country, I could tell you I'm coming and hell's coming with me. Everything, therefore, depends on the form of Russia's retaliation, the U.S. response. And if they're not canceled as a result in the peace talks, the outcome of tomorrow's talks in Istanbul. If the first two phases of the scenario sequence don't spiral out of control, then it's all out, depends on whether Ukraine makes concessions to Russia after its retaliation. So in other words, everyone is now locked down for the retaliation of Russia. It's coming. Russia makes concessions to Ukraine after U.S. response to Russia's retaliation, or their talks are once again inconclusive. The first is by far the best outcome for Russia. Are you confused yet? Because even the media can't figure out what's going on. Did this strike force Russia to the negotiating table, humbled and broken? Or, emboldened, angered, they retaliate, and because of the retaliation and two major strikes on both countries, then they're both suddenly going to decide to negotiate peace. Of course, now if you were to believe that Trump didn't know and this was launched behind his back, well then, the bigger apparatus would have gotten its goal to incite a larger conflict, to assure the conflict continues to move forward. That's why your opinion here is so valuable. Did Trump know, or did he not know? These are just the facts behind what could now happen. Not only might Ukraine rearm and reposition ahead of reinitiating hostilities on comparatively better terms, but uninformed. Western troops might also flood into Ukraine, where they could then function as tripwires for manipulating Trump into escalating to de-escalate if they're attacked by Russia. So in other words, if you had an attack big enough and it tripped off a response from Putin into Ukraine, NATO and the Western countries could then use that as a reason to put more Western troops into Ukraine, further bolstering the war and forcing Trump's hand into enforcing it against Russia. Power through force to bring Russia to the negotiating table. And now you probably have one of the more realistic scenarios of what occurred. Who pulled the trigger? Did Trump, or did the other countries pull the trigger to force Trump's hand? And Lindsey Graham's visit was just a really, really bad coincidence. Folks, this is going to line up over the next several hours, and I will be here to cover it for you all week. So sit back and buckle up, because a lot is about to shift in that war theater immediately. I love you all. Until next time, Godspeed and God bless. Justice Knight, signing out.